In this video we are going to learn Unit 5, Chapter 1, of Class 10th English, Beloved Boles. It is a short story written by Maxim Gorky, a famous Russian writer. He lived from 1868 to 1936. His real name was Alexei Maximovich Peshkov, but he wrote under the name Maxim Gorky. Gorky wrote many stories about poor and working people and their hard lives. Some of his famous books are Mother and My Childhood. His stories often teach us about kindness, love, and human feelings. An acquaintance of mine once told me this story. The narrator says that one of his friends once told him this story. When I was a student at Moscow, I happened to live alongside a Polish woman, Teresa by name. When the narrator was a student in Moscow, he lived near a woman named Teresa, who was from Poland. She was tall and strong, with bushy black eyebrows, dark brown hair and a large coarse face. Teresa was a tall and strong woman with thick black eyebrows, dark brown hair, and a rough-looking face. The gleam of her dark eyes, her thick bass voice, and her muscular vigor, horrified me. Her shining dark eyes, deep voice, and strong body made the narrator feel scared of her. I lived on the top floor and her room was opposite mine. The narrator's room was on the top floor of the building, and Teresa's room was right across from his. I never left my door open when I knew her to be at home. He always kept his door closed when Teresa was home because he was afraid of her. Sometimes I chanced to meet her on the staircase or in the yard, and she would smile at me. Sometimes, he met her on the stairs or outside in the yard, and she would smile kindly at him. Occasionally, I saw her drunk, with bleary eyes, and tousled hair. Sometimes, he saw her drunk, with sleepy eyes and messy hair. On such occasions she would speak to me. When she was drunk, she would talk to him. "How do ye do, Mr. Student?" she'd say with a stupid laugh. She would laugh foolishly and say, "Hello, Mr. Student. I should have liked to change my quarters, but my little chamber was a nice one." The narrator wanted to move to another room, but he liked his small room very much. There was such a wide view from the window, and it was always so quiet in the street below I endured. His window had a beautiful wide view, and the street below was peaceful, so he decided to stay there even though he was scared of Teresa. One morning I was sprawling on my couch, trying to find some sort of excuse for not attending my class. One morning, he was lying lazily on his bed, thinking of a reason to skip his class. The door opened, and Teresa's bass voice resounded, "Good health to you, Mr. Student." Suddenly, the door opened, and Teresa came in with her deep, loud voice saying, "Good morning, Mr. Student." "What do you want?" I asked. I saw that she was confused. This was very unusual for her. The student asked Teresa what she wanted. He noticed that she looked shy and nervous, which was strange because she was usually bold and strong. "Sir, I want to beg a favor of you. Will you grant it?" Teresa politely asked him for help and wanted to know if he would agree. I lay there silent. The student didn't say anything and just waited to hear what she wanted. "I want to send a letter home, that's what it is," she said. Her voice was beseeching, soft, timid. Teresa said she wanted to send a letter to someone at home. Her voice was gentle and shy, not loud as usual. I jumped, sat down at my table, took a sheet of paper, and said. The student got up quickly, went to his table, took out paper, and got ready to help her write. "Come here, sit down, and dictate." He told her to sit down and tell him what to write in the letter. She came, sat down very gingerly on a chair, and looked at me with a guilty look. Teresa sat carefully on the chair and looked a bit embarrassed, as if she had done something wrong. "Well, to whom do you want to write?" The student asked who she wanted to send the letter to. "To Boleslav Kashput, in the town, on the Warsaw Road." Teresa said she wanted to send the letter to a man named Boleslav Kashput who lived in town on Warsaw Road. "Well, fire away." The student told her to start speaking so he could write what she said. "My dear Boles, my beloved, my faithful lover, may God protect thee, thou heart of gold. Why hast thou not written for such a long time to thy sorrowing little dove, Teresa?" Teresa started her letter lovingly, calling Boles her dear and faithful lover. She asked why he hadn't written to her and called herself his sad little dove. I very nearly burst out laughing. A sorrowing little dove, more than 5 feet tall. Restraining myself somehow, I asked. The student almost laughed because Teresa was a big, strong woman, not a tiny dove. But he controlled himself and kept quiet. Who is this Boles? He asked who this person, Boles, was. Boles, Mr. Student, she said, as if offended with me for blundering over the name. He is Boles, my young man. Teresa corrected him sharply, saying the name was Boles, not Boles, and explained that he was her boyfriend. Young man, the student was surprised that someone like Teresa had a boyfriend. Why are you so surprised, sir? Cannot I, a girl, have a young man? Teresa was upset that he seemed shocked. She asked why she couldn't have a boyfriend like any other girl. She, a girl, well, the student was amazed because he thought Teresa was too rough and strong to call herself a girl. Oh, why not? I said. All things are possible. And has he been your young man long? The student smiled and said kindly that anything is possible. He then asked if Boles had been her boyfriend for a long time. 6 years. Teresa said she had loved Boles for 6 years. Oh, ho, I thought, well, let us write your letter. The student was surprised that her love had lasted so long, but he told her to continue the letter. I thank you most heartily, sir, for your kind services, said Teresa to me, when I had finished writing. Perhaps, can I be of service to you in any way? When the letter was done, Teresa thanked the student warmly and asked if she could help him in return. No, I most humbly thank you all the same. The student politely said no and thanked her back. She departed. Teresa left the room. A week or 2 passed. It was evening. I was sitting at my window. I was bored. The weather was dirty. I didn't want to go out. After 1 or 2 weeks, one evening the student was sitting by his window. The weather was bad and he was feeling bored. Then the door opened. Heaven be praised. Someone came in. Suddenly, someone entered his room. He was glad that someone had come to break his boredom. Oh, Mr. Student, you have no pressing business, I hope. Teresa came in and asked politely if he was busy. It was Teresa. Humph. The student saw it was Teresa again and sighed. No. What is it? He said he wasn't busy and asked what she wanted. I was going to ask you, sir, to write me another letter. Teresa told him she wanted help writing another letter. Very well. To Boles, eh? The student smiled and asked if it was another letter to her lover, Boles. No. This time it is from him. Teresa said no. This time the letter was supposed to be from Boles. What? The student was shocked and confused. Stupid that I am. It is not for me. Mr. Student, I beg your pardon. It is for a friend of mine, that is to say, not a friend but an acquaintance, a man. He has a sweetheart just like me here, another Teresa. That's how it is. Will you, sir, write a letter to this Teresa? Teresa quickly tried to cover up her lie. She said the letter wasn't for her but for another man who wanted to write to his girlfriend, also named Teresa. I looked at her. Her face was troubled, her fingers were trembling. I was a bit fogged at first and then I guessed how it was. The student noticed that she looked nervous and her hands were shaking. Then he understood the truth, there was no Boles at all. Look here, my lady, I said. There are no Boleses or Teresas at all, and you've been telling me a pack of lies. Don't you come fooling around me any longer. I have no wish to be your friend or acquaintance, or your young man. Do you understand? The student got angry. He told Teresa that she had been lying and warned her not to play tricks or act friendly with him again. And suddenly she grew strangely terrified and distraught. She began to shift from foot to foot without moving from the place, and spluttered comically, as if. Teresa suddenly looked very scared and upset. She started moving nervously, unable to speak properly, as if she was about to cry. She wanted to say something and couldn't. I waited to see what would come of all this. Teresa tried to speak but couldn't get the words out. The student waited to see what she would do next. And somehow, I began to think that I had misjudged her a little. It was evidently something very different. The student started to feel that he had misunderstood Teresa. He realized there might be something deeper and sad behind her actions. "Mr. Student," she began, and suddenly, waving her hand, she turned abruptly towards the door and went out. Teresa tried to say something but stopped halfway. She waved her hand and quickly left the room. I remained with a very unpleasant feeling in my mind. The student felt sorry and uncomfortable after she left. I listened. Her door was flung open violently and then slammed shut. He heard her open her door roughly and then shut it loudly. She was clearly upset. I thought it over, and resolved to go to her. I'd invite her to come back in here and write everything she wanted. The student decided to go to Teresa's room and tell her she could come back and write her letter peacefully. I entered her apartment. She was sitting at the table, leaning on her elbows, with her head in her hands. When he entered, Teresa was sitting sadly at her table with her head resting on her hands. "Listen to me," I said. The student tried to talk to her calmly. She leaped from her seat, came towards me with flashing eyes. Laying her hands on my shoulders, she began to whisper. Teresa jumped up quickly, came close to him with bright, emotional eyes, and spoke softly but with strong feelings. "Look you, now, it's like this. There's no Boles at all, and there's no Teresa either. But what's that to you? Is it a hard thing for you to draw your pen over paper? There's nobody at all, neither Boles, nor Teresa, only me." Teresa confessed the truth. She said there was no Boles and no other Teresa. She made it all up. She just wanted someone to write kind, loving words to her because she was lonely. "Pardon me," said I, altogether flabbergasted at this. "What is it all about? There's no Boles, you say?" The student was shocked and confused. He asked again if it was really true that Boles didn't exist. "No, so it is." Teresa said yes, there really was no Boles. "And no Teresa either." The student asked if there wasn't even another Teresa. "And no Teresa. I'm Teresa." Teresa said that she was the only Teresa. Everything in the letters was about herself, her own feelings. I didn't understand it at all. I fixed my eyes upon her, and tried to make it out. The student couldn't fully understand what she meant. He looked at her carefully, trying to figure it out. But she went again to the table, searched about for something, came back to me, and said in an offended tone. Teresa walked back to the table, looked for something, and returned sounding hurt and angry. "If it was so hard for you to write to Boles, look, there's your letter, take it. Others will write for me." She told him angrily that if he didn't want to help, he could take his letter back. She would find someone else to write for her. She was deeply hurt because she just wanted kindness and attention. I looked. In her hand was my letter to Boles. Phew. The student saw that Teresa was holding the same letter he had written earlier to Boles. He was surprised. "Listen, Teresa, what is the meaning of all this? Why must you get others to write for you when I have already written it, and you haven't sent it?" He asked her why she wanted someone else to write when he had already written the letter, and why she hadn't sent it yet. "Sent it where?" Teresa asked, confused. "Sent it where? Why, to this Boles." The student said, "To Boles, of course. There's no such person." Teresa said sadly that there was no person named Boles at all. I absolutely did not understand it. Then she explained. The student couldn't understand what she meant, so Teresa began to explain. "What is it?" she said, still offended. "There's no such person, I tell you." Teresa, still upset, repeated that Boles did not exist. She extended her arms as if she herself did not understand why there should be no such person. "But I wanted him to be there. Am I then not a human creature like the rest of you?" Yes, I know, of course. Yet, no harm was done to anyone by my writing to him." Teresa stretched out her arms sadly. She said she wished Boles was real. She asked why she couldn't have someone to love, like everyone else. She said she didn't hurt anyone by pretending and writing to him. "Pardon me, to whom?" the student asked softly. "Sorry, but to whom are you writing then?" "To Boles, of course." Teresa said she was writing to Boles, the man she had imagined. "But he doesn't exist." The student reminded her that Boles wasn't a real person. Alas, but what if he doesn't? He doesn't exist, but he might. I write to him, and it looks as if he did exist. And Teresa, that's me, he replies to me, and then I write to him again. Teresa said sadly that even if Boles wasn't real, she pretended he was. When she wrote to him, it felt like he truly existed. She even imagined his reply, which made her feel happy and less lonely. I understood at last, and I felt so sick, so miserable, so ashamed, somehow. The student finally understood everything. He felt very sad, sorry, and ashamed for being rude to her earlier. Alongside of me, not 3 yards away, lived a human creature who had nobody in the world to treat her kindly. He realized that Teresa, who lived so close to him, had no one in the world who loved or cared for her. With no one to be affectionate to her, this human being had invented a friend for herself. Teresa was so lonely that she imagined a friend, Boles, just so she could feel loved and cared for. Look, now, you wrote me a letter to Boles, and I gave it to someone else to read it to me. And when they read it to me, I listened and fancied that Boles was there. And I asked you to write me a letter from Boles to Teresa that is to me. When they write such a letter for me to me, I feel quite sure that Boles is there. And life grows easier for me. Teresa told him that when someone read the letter he wrote, she imagined that Boles was real and talking to her. When she got a reply from Boles, it made her feel happy and made her life seem less sad and lonely. Take you for a blockhead, said I to myself when I heard this. The student called himself foolish in his mind. He felt guilty for not understanding her feelings earlier. He realized she wasn't lying, she was just lonely and needed kindness. And thenceforth, regularly, twice a week, I wrote a letter to Boles, and an answer from Boles to Teresa. From that time onward, the student began to help Teresa regularly. Twice every week, he wrote one letter from Teresa to Boles, and another letter from Boles to Teresa. She, of course, listened to them, and wept like anything. She roared, I should say, with her bass voice. Teresa would listen to the letters being read and cry loudly out of emotion and joy. Her voice was deep, so the student said she roared when she cried. And in return for my service, she began to mend the holes I had in my socks, shirts, and other articles of clothing. As a way to thank the student for his kindness, Teresa started fixing his torn clothes and socks. 3 months later she was thrown into prison for some reason or the other, and by now she must surely be dead. After 3 months, Teresa was sent to prison for some unknown reason, and the student believed she had died by now. My acquaintance shook the ash from his cigarette, looked pensively up at the sky, and thus concluded. The person telling this story stopped to think deeply while smoking, then shared his final thoughts about life. Well, the more a human creature has tasted of bitter things, the more it hungers after the sweet things of life. He said that the more pain and sadness a person has gone through, the more they long for love, kindness, and happiness. And we, wrapped in the rags of our virtues, regard others through the mist of our self-sufficiency. He said that people often feel proud and think they are better than others. They forget to show kindness and understanding to those who suffer. Convinced of our righteousness, we do not understand this. Because we think we are always right and good, we fail to see the pain and loneliness of others. And the whole thing turns out pretty stupidly and very cruelly. This kind of thinking, being proud and unkind, makes life unfair and cruel. But enough of this. It is all as old as the hills. So old that it is a shame to speak of it. Very old indeed, that's what it is. He ended by saying that such selfishness and loneliness have existed for a long, long time, as old as the hills. It's a sad truth of human life. The story, Beloved Boles, shows how lonely Teresa was. She made up an imaginary friend named Boles just to feel loved. When the student realized this, he pitied her and helped by writing letters. The story teaches us that everyone needs love, care, and kindness, and that we should never judge others without understanding their pain. Now, let's discuss the textual question and answers. A. How is Teresa's physical appearance described? Teresa is described as a tall, thin woman with red eyes and untidy hair, showing signs of poverty and loneliness. B. I never left my door open when I knew her to be at home. Why does Mr. Student Say so. He says this because Teresa often quarreled loudly and used rough language, which annoyed him. C. How does Teresa's appearance and tone change when she approaches the narrator for help? Her rough tone becomes soft and polite, and her face looks humble and pleading. D. What favor did Teresa expect from Mr. Student? How did he respond to her request? She asked him to write a letter to her friend Boles, and he agreed to do it. E. What was the content of the letter dictated by Teresa? The letter expressed love and concern, saying she missed Boles and hoped he was well. F. What made the narrator burst out laughing? He laughed when Teresa asked him to write a reply from Boles to her. G. Do you think that Teresa is courteous? Pick an instance from the passage to support your answer. No, she is not very courteous. She speaks roughly, for example, when she orders the student to sit down and write. H. Why was the narrator astonished when Teresa asked him to write the second letter? He was astonished because she wanted a letter from Boles, who didn't even exist. I. Why did Mr. Student get angry with Teresa? He got angry because she hadn't sent the letter he wrote and he thought she was fooling him. J. What did the narrator guess about Boles and Teresa after the conversation? He guessed that both Boles and Teresa in the letters were imaginary characters created by her. K. Why do you think Teresa asked Mr. Student to write the letter to Boles? She was lonely and wanted to imagine that someone loved and cared for her. L. Why does the narrator go to Teresa's apartment? He went to ask why she wanted others to write letters when he had already written one for her. M. Am I then not a human creature like the rest of you? What does Teresa mean by this? She means that she too needs love, care, and companionship like everyone else. N. When does the narrator begin to feel empathy for Teresa? He feels empathy when he realizes that Boles is imaginary and that she is terribly lonely. O. Why does Mr. Student decide to continue writing letters for Teresa? He feels pity and compassion for her loneliness and wants to make her happy. P. How did Teresa repay the narrator? She repaid him by mending his torn socks, shirts, and clothes. Q. Why, in your opinion, does Teresa cry when she listens to the letters? She cries because the letters make her feel loved and cared for, even if it is only an illusion. Activities. 1. How do the narrator's preconceptions influence his initial interactions with Teresa? The narrator first judges Teresa harshly because of her rough behavior and poor appearance. His prejudice makes him avoid her and think she is unpleasant, preventing him from seeing her loneliness and humanity. 2. What does the imaginary Boles represent for Teresa? How does he fulfill her emotional needs? Boles represents the love, care, and companionship that Teresa lacks in real life. Through writing and receiving imaginary letters, she feels comforted and less lonely, as if someone truly cares for her. 3. But enough of this. It is all as old as the hills. So old that it is a shame to speak of it. Comment on this statement. This statement shows the narrator's realization that loneliness and the need for love are timeless human experiences. He feels sad that society often ignores such emotional suffering, even though it has always existed. 4. Appearances can be deceptive. Can you relate this proverb to the change in attitude of the narrator in the story? Yes. The narrator initially saw Teresa as rude and unpleasant, but later discovered her kind heart and deep loneliness. This change taught him that people are not always what they seem from the outside. 1. What was Mr. Student's impression of Teresa? Mr. Student's first impression of Teresa was negative. He found her loud, rough, and unpleasant. Words and phrases like thick bass voice, large coarse face, bleary eyes, and I never left my door open when I knew her to be at home show that he saw her as rude, dirty, and frightening. 2. How does Mr. Student realize that his picture of Teresa was one-sided? Later, he notices Teresa's timid voice, guilty look, and soft manner when she asks him to write a letter. When he learns that Boles is imaginary, he realizes she is lonely and desperate for affection, not rough or bad as he first thought. This makes him feel pity and shame for misjudging her. Now, Making use of the above hints, prepare a brief character sketch of Teresa. Character sketch of Teresa. Teresa is a Polish woman who lives a hard and lonely life. At first, she appears to be a rough and unfriendly person. She has a large coarse face, bushy eyebrows, and a deep bass voice, which make the narrator afraid of her. Her untidy look and drunken behavior give others a poor impression of her. However, beneath this rough exterior, Teresa has a soft and sensitive heart. When she asks the student to write a letter to her beloved, Boles, we see a very different side of her, gentle, polite, and emotional. Later, we learn that Boles does not exist and that Teresa has invented him to comfort herself in her loneliness. This shows her deep need for love and companionship. She is not educated, but she has a creative and imaginative mind that helps her escape her sadness. Teresa's character reflects the pain of those who are ignored and unloved by society. Even though she is poor, she shows gratitude and kindness by mending the student's clothes as a way of repaying him. In the end, Teresa comes across as a tragic yet touching figure, who reminds us that every human being, no matter how rough or simple, needs affection and understanding. Mr. Student forms a negative impression of Teresa initially, influenced by her appearance and behavior. He discusses his thoughts and feelings about her with one of his classmates. Write the possible conversation. Mr. Student, you know, I live next door to a Polish woman named Teresa. She frightens me sometimes. Classmate, really? What's so scary about her? Mr. Student, she's tall and strong, with a large, rough face and thick eyebrows. Her voice is so deep, it sounds like a man's. Classmate, laughs, maybe she's just loud. Mr. Student, no, it's more than that. She often looks drunk, with messy hair and red eyes. Sometimes she shouts in the corridor. I never keep my door open when she's around. Classmate, maybe she's just lonely or troubled. Mr. Student, I doubt it. She always seems wild and careless. Honestly, I wish I could change rooms. Classmate, well, you never know. People aren't always what they seem. Maybe she's not as bad as you think. Mr. Student, maybe, but right now, she just gives me the creeps. Mr. Student is perplexed by the story of Teresa's imaginary lover and her unusual letters. Later, he understands that Teresa had invented the imaginary lover because she was terribly lonely. He felt ashamed of his prejudices and misjudgments. He writes a letter to one of his close friends detailing his experiences. Write the possible letter. Moscow, March 12, 2025. Dear friend, I must tell you about a strange and touching experience I recently had. You remember that Polish woman who lives opposite my room, Teresa? I used to think she was rough, noisy, and unpleasant. Her loud voice and careless look always annoyed me. One day, she asked me to write a letter for her to a man named Boles. I agreed, thinking he was her lover. Later, she asked me to write a reply from Boles to her. I grew angry and thought she was making a fool of me. But soon I discovered the truth. Boles never existed. She had invented him because she was terribly lonely and had no one in the world to love her. That moment changed me completely. I felt so ashamed of my earlier thoughts. Teresa, whom I had disliked, turned out to be a kind and tender soul, craving a little affection. I realized how cruel it is to judge others by their appearance. Your friend, Mr. Student. Activity 4, Mr. Student, was taken aback when he realized that both Boles and the relationship of Boles and Teresa were imaginary. He realizes that there are individuals who struggle to establish an identity of their own. Draft the possible diary entry by Mr. Student that day. March 12, 2026. Today I learned a lesson I will never forget. I discovered that Teresa's beloved Boles was not real. She had created him in her imagination to fill the emptiness in her life. At first, I was shocked and even confused, but later I understood how lonely she must have been to invent someone who loved her. I feel deeply ashamed of how I misjudged her. I saw only her rough voice and shabby clothes, but I never saw her pain. There are so many people like Teresa, who struggle quietly for love, respect, and a sense of identity. I realize now that kindness and understanding mean far more than pride or judgment. Mr. Student, the literary club of your school has decided to conduct an Ethnic Day celebration. Aishwarya Ritapana Pradhan, India's first transgender civil service officer, has consented to be the chief guest on the occasion. Draft an event invitation for the program.